Good evening, Chris. Thank you, my friend. Much appreciated.
You bet.
And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Happy to have you here. Quick thing right off the bat. I have a book out. My most recent book called Prequel came out last year. You might have heard about it. Even if you didn't, here's the news. Here's why I'm mentioning it. My book Prequel is coming out in paperback next month on May 6th. And the reason I'm telling you this now is that I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling around the country, doing live events, live talks to support the book coming out. It's not like a big book tour, but it's just a little one. But just in case you have any interest in seeing me in person at one of these events, where the real attraction is meeting other people who are interested in seeing me in person. Here's 3 dates that I can tell you about tonight where we are putting tickets on sale right now. Thursday, May 8th, Miami, Florida. Friday, May 9th, Long Island in New York. And Saturday, May 31st in St. Louis, Missouri. So if you'd like tickets to go to one of those events, you can get them at msnbc.com/prequel, which is the name of the book. Or you can just open up the camera function on your phone, hold your phone up to that weird little blob thing that's on the screen right now, and it will give you a link to click to go right there. So I just wanted to get that out of the way right off the bat. I will let you know when we've got some more dates. If we have more dates, I think we're going to have a few more dates. But that's it for now. Okay, let's get going. You have heard of this person named Kash Patel, right? Do you remember Kash Patel? He was like a cartoon figure from the first Donald Trump term. He made himself cash-branded merchandise, where the S in cash is a $sign. Get it? He sold cash-branded wine. He sold a magic elixir that he said would reverse your vaccination status if, by some sad turn of events, you'd had the COVID vaccine. He could reverse it for you. He sold something called Coin, but with a G. Coin? C-O-I-G-N. He called it a credit card for conservatives because, you know, conservatives can't use regular credit cards. He did podcasts for a conspiracy theorist media company controlled by the Chinese Falun Gong religious movement. He also famously sold a whole line of children's books about the glory of King Donald, which means exactly what you think it does. And so naturally, Donald Trump looked at that list of qualifications and decided that that man is the right choice to be director of the FBI. And at that job, Kash Patel quickly distinguished himself, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Upon reporting for the job, Mr. Patel made clear his immediate priorities. Quoting from the Wall Street Journal, quote, Patel told officials he planned to spend a lot of time in Las Vegas, where he was living last year. He ordered new decor for his Washington office at the FBI headquarters and asked for his personal trainer to be cleared to enter the headquarters building for his workouts. That same Wall Street Journal story about Kash Patel's first days on the job at the FBI also included the fact that Mr. Patel, quote, broke a promise he made to agents that he would appoint a deputy director of the FBI from among their ranks. So here's this, like, podcaster tent revival guy, right? With the merchandise branded with his name and the bottles of snake oil that he'll sell you and the children's books about Donald Trump being a king. That is who Donald Trump puts in charge of the FBI. When he gets there, he tells the agents of the FBI, essentially, hey, listen, don't worry, I know I'm an outsider, but I respect what you do enough that we're going to pick one of you guys, an experienced FBI agent, to be my deputy in running this place. Sure, maybe I'm just a podcaster, but we'll put somebody in here as my number 2 who you'll really trust. And then does he do that? No, he does not. He hires instead, as the deputy director of the FBI, another podcaster. This burly man, whose whole kind of brand as a podcaster is that he's kind of burly. His whole shtick is man in tight T-shirt, talks about fighting a lot, and makes a lot of melodrama about the importance of physical toughness and being willing to die heroically for the cause. And of course, the cause is the greatness and infallibility of Donald Trump. Wow, does he love that guy? But he means it only in the manliest way possible. Look at these arms. It's like his whole shtick. So Kash Patel, podcaster, names this other podcaster guy to be deputy director of the FBI instead of actually hiring anyone with FBI experience. But now that deputy director, he too has started on the job. And how is that going so far? Headline: FBI creates multi-agent bodyguard team to protect Dan Bongino. The former pro-Trump podcaster is the first deputy director to have a security detail. Full-time protection could require up to 20 agents, former officials said. Quote, in a break from past practice, in which the Bureau's number 2 officials have not had security details, the FBI has now issued a call for agents to serve as bodyguards for Deputy Director Dan Bongino. The FBI canvass sought agents willing to relocate for 30 days of temporary duty to protect Dan Bongino 24 hours a day. Full-time protection could require as many as 20 agents. The previous deputy director was assigned a single agent part-time to accompany him to certain events. He had a full detail only when he traveled overseas. In contrast, though, now, 2 former FBI officials familiar with the matter said Dan Bongino's current bodyguards have followed him inside secure FBI facilities, including headquarters in Washington. They said directors typically walk around FBI headquarters without their security details. But not this deputy director, not this podcaster. He wants the full 24 hours, 20-man team surrounding him at all times, including while he's walking around inside the FBI building. Because, what? Like spiders? Creaking sounds? Is there any chance you just hate to be alone? I mean, we are in this everything must go moment, right? In this administration, we can no longer fund libraries or museums. We must stop our work on multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis and drug-resistant gonorrhea. We are closing the Head Start offices. We are firing the meteorologists who produce weather forecasts. We are firing the people who answer the phones at the Social Security office. We are firing tens of thousands of people who work with veterans at the VA. We are shutting the U.S. Department of Education because everything must go. It's all waste. It's all waste. It all has to go because we, the taxpayers, must pay for Kash Patel's new drapes in his office, his nice new decor that he demanded on day one, and also the cost of him, what was that phrase, of him spending, what was the quote? Quote, a lot of time in Las Vegas, where he won't even be enjoying the new drapes. Also, we have to pay for his deputy director, Dan Bongino, the podcaster with the arms. We'll be paying for him to be surrounded at all times by a full-time phalanx of a 20-man team of bodyguards who stay with him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, like, while he sleeps, they can sit and watch him. And while he's inside the FBI headquarters building at work inside, they will be there surrounding him in case, like, he has to get up and go potty or something. There's a team that can take him. But it's not only Trump's guys at the FBI. Headline: the cabinet secretary who wants his cookies freshly baked. Trump administration Interior Secretary Doug Burgum likes chocolate chip cookies, preferably freshly baked and still warm. This peculiar fact became the talk of the Department of the Interior in recent weeks after his chief of staff made an unusual request of staff in his office. Quote, learn to regularly bake cookies for Secretary Burgum and his guests using the industrial ovens at the department headquarters. That request was not the only move by his team that has alarmed some Interior officials. 4 people familiar with Burgum's leadership told The Atlantic that those who run Burgum's office have repeatedly made unusual demands to his employees. His office leadership, for example, once instructed political appointees to act as servers for a multi-course meal. They also did, like waiters, they made them into waiters. They also dispatched a U.S. Park Police helicopter for his personal transportation. On at least one occasion, a political appointee was told to remake the cookies because the batch was subpar, according to 3 people. The Atlantic has 3 sources on the Interior Department staff member being told to rebake the cookies for the secretary. What'd they do with the old cookies? What was wrong with them? Is there anything you could do to cookies that would be that bad? Now, there are sources from the Department of Interior that are defending Secretary Burgum here, noting explicitly in their pushback to The Atlantic that staff members are not required to make this cookie dough themselves. It is store-bought cookie dough that they only need to bake. So ease up, people. Quote, Burgum has also used the political appointees in his department for another purpose in recent days, stacking firewood in his office's fireplace. Burgum also reportedly demands, quote, that any labels get removed from water bottles before they are delivered to him. Or else. I mean, the man obviously cannot remove the labels from his own water bottles. That must be done by other government employees, people on the payroll paid by the taxpayers, because I mean, think about it. Honestly, if the secretary himself was occupied removing his own water bottle labels, he might not get to the cookies in time. And then who would send them back, demanding that they were not warm enough and they must be rebaked? The secretary is in charge of some really specific stuff. Tell me more about your Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, at the National Park Service, they're firing the rangers and the maintenance crews and scientists by the thousands. But Park Service helicopters, including the staff that fly them and maintain them, they're being diverted to pop Secretary warm cookies around town when he's in a rush. You know, honestly, it's so much nicer than sitting in traffic. Quote, the aviation unit of the U.S. Park Police, a division of the Department of the Interior, does not routinely handle VIP transport, according to a U.S. Park Police fact sheet. The blue and white helicopters launched to provide additional aerial surveillance during presidential and other dignitary movements and are used for medevac, search and rescue, high-risk prisoner transport, and to support law enforcement operations. And also to make sure he is there in time for the cookies to still be warm, or they are going back. Do it again! Doug Burgum used to be the governor of North Dakota. In his very red state, there were protests all over this weekend. Nearly 1,000 people showed up in Fargo, North Dakota. That's not far from where Doug Burgum is from. But tons of people also turned out in Bismarck, North Dakota, and Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and in Grand Forks. Minot, North Dakota actually had a really, really big turnout. And look at this. This was from little Jamestown, North Dakota. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, look, there's like 5 people down by the Dairy Queen. But no, that's just who was early. The footage keeps going, and then you realize, oh, look, the whole town's coming. The whole town's coming down, marching down to join them. Those other people were just staking out the spot. We tried here on the show last night to show a snapshot of all the huge protests that happened this weekend. We really only got to a tiny slice of them. There were so many protests in so many places. I mean, the millions of people protested this weekend. And we heard from you guys about it in response to last night's show. Hey, you should have made a bigger deal about what happened in my town. You should have shown how big it was in Las Vegas. Yes, absolutely. Also, you know, Richmond, Virginia was really, really impressive. And a ton of people turned out in Bozeman, Montana. And in Knoxville, Tennessee, there was a ton of people. And in Galveston, Texas, people were out and people were in a very good mood. I mean, we didn't even try to show the protests across the border, the protests at cities abroad and at U.S. embassies like the one in Ottawa, where tons of people turned out. There were literally millions of people who turned out this weekend in person to protest against Trump and what he's doing, and it is hard to show it all. But you know what really surprised me? It shouldn't have. I've been doing this enough weeks now that this shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. What surprised me is that after we saw millions of people turn out on Monday, it just kept going. As soon as the hands-off protests finished up on Saturday, it kept going.
Protesters gathered outside the Social Security office in Mount Lebanon, continuing protests against the Trump administration. Several different groups coming together to hold this rally, fighting against the Department of Government Efficiency's effort to slash funding for the program and showing support for people who work inside the building.
They call it an entitlement, but most people who are against Social Security have been paying in their whole lives. You plan on it when you're older, and then for that to be under threat now is, unconscionable.
This follows the large, widespread hands-off protests across the country over the weekend, including thousands gathering in downtown Pittsburgh on Saturday.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of people gathered at a whole bunch of different hands-off protests on Saturday, including in Pennsylvania. But as of Monday, that was Mount Lebanon in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. People are just still going. This was another protest for Social Security in Niles, Michigan yesterday. This last night was Youngstown, Ohio, in a Republican district where the Republican Congressman Michael Rulli has refused all year to hold a town hall with his constituents. Last night, 2,800 people turned out for a single town hall event with Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Their Republican congressman won't do it. A Democrat nearby will. On the other side of the number line, in terms of the number of people turning out, but maybe just as impressive, were these folks who scrambled and turned out on less than an hour's notice yesterday when they found out that Trump Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was coming to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City to do a freaking anti-fluoride event. You see, people turned out on no notice. This was not planned in advance. They just heard he was coming and they scrambled. Got polio? Me neither. Thanks, science. Vaccines save lives. Make America scientific again. This was, again, not pre-planned. They just scrambled when they heard he was coming to make sure that somebody was there to show up and to say no. This was today at the U.S. Senate office building in Washington, D.C. Fired federal workers going from office to office, telling U.S. senators of both parties about their jobs and their work and what the American people are losing thanks to Trump's mass indiscriminate firings of federal workers. This was Detroit today. People turning out in the cold in Detroit. Vaccinate yourself against dictatorship. Kill the cut. Save science. Cut DOGE, not funding. And, we see the direct line between pushback and the result. Sometimes a dotted line. Sometimes you got to follow it out in time. But if you look, you see it working in ways large and small, every day, everywhere. Tonight, we got a federal judge in Washington, D.C., ordering President Trump to stop his punishment of the Associated Press. This is from the ruling tonight, quote, "The AP seeks restored eligibility for admission to the press pool and limited access press events, untainted by an impermissible viewpoint-based exclusion. That is what the court orders today, for the government to put the AP on an equal playing field as similarly situated outlets, despite the AP's use of disfavored terminology. The court declares that the AP's exclusion has been contrary to the First Amendment, and it enjoins the government from continuing down that unlawful path. For these reasons, it is ordered that defendants shall immediately rescind the denial of AP's access to the Oval Office, Air Force One, and other limited spaces based on AP's viewpoint, when such spaces are made open to other members of the White House press pool. It is ordered that defendants shall immediately rescind their viewpoint-based denial of the AP's access to events open to all credentialed White House journalists." That ruling tonight in federal court in Washington, D.C. Also today, the Trump administration put back up the website for the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman. The Washington Post reported on Sunday that that website had been taken down by Trump and replaced with a bizarre Orwellian Trump-think version of that history, which didn't mention slavery or African Americans or the fact that it specifically was African Americans who were enslaved. Headline in the Washington Post after that coverage Sunday. Here's the headline today. National Park Service restores Underground Railroad webpage after outcry. We even today had news that Trump's truly inexplicable, even bizarre cuts at a refuge for Florida manatees. That has now been reversed. Trump fired the rangers at this manatee refuge. But now, quote, after public outcry and 2 court orders, the rangers are back on the job. This is such a stupid way to run a government, right? Random individual disasters manage somehow to get enough attention to often get protested, and then the Trump people find they can't really defend them, and so those things then get partially restored or maybe not really restored, but they say they'll fix them, and they hope people stop complaining. But meanwhile, while people are scrambling to try to fix that mistake they made, these guys are destroying 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 other things all the time. It is a terrible, absolutely ridiculous way to run a government, especially under the name of efficiency, right? I mean, how can it be that the reason we still have people on the job today storing and transporting our nuclear weapons is not because Donald Trump didn't fire them, because he did, but only because, just our luck, the right people found out that he had fired them and made a big enough ruckus about it in time so some of them could be hired back. That is the reason we now have people on the job keeping our nuclear weapons from prematurely exploding. That's the system now. That's how we're running it. And it's incredibly stupid. But the big problem with that being our system right now is that for some problems, the people who are most affected and most hurt by it are the people who can least make a ruckus. The people who have the least opportunity to see what's wrong, complain about it in a way that is big enough that it's going to get noticed and their complaints are going to be taken seriously. And so somebody's going to do something about it, and maybe it'll get reversed. The people who are going to be hurt the most grievously are the people who are least capable of raising a ruckus about what's being done to them. And so here we are. Headline, Washington Post. Social Security website keeps crashing as DOJ demands cuts to IT staff. Retirees and disabled people are facing chronic website outages and other access problems as they attempt to log into their online Social Security accounts. The website has crashed repeatedly in recent weeks, with outages lasting anywhere from 20 minutes to almost a day. Even when the site is back online, many customers have not been able to sign into their accounts or have logged in only to find information missing. The disruptions are occurring as Trump's acting Social Security chief and the DOJ team move to lay off large swaths of the workforce. Thousands of Social Security employees have already been pushed out, many in customer-facing roles, others with expertise in the agency's technology systems. The network outages are one in a cascade of blows to customer service that also have hobbled phone systems and field office operations as the workforce shrinks. The network crashes specifically appear to be caused by an expansion initiated by the Trump team. The Trump technology staff did not test the software against a high volume of users to see if the servers could handle a rush. Connectivity issues and bugs with the expanded system have caused the portal that manages logins and authentication for many Social Security applications to go down. That's the Washington Post. Here's the headline in the New York Times, quote, "Just a mess. Staff cuts, rushed changes, and anxiety at Social Security." President Trump promised not to touch Social Security, but as Elon Musk's team trims staff and plans that's doing a lot of work there. Trims staff and plans cuts to phone services, the system is groaning under the pressure. And here's the lead, quote, "The line started forming outside the Social Security office in suburban Glendale, Arizona, not long after sunrise. Dozens of retirees and people with disabilities shuffling papers, some leaning on walkers, all anxious to know whether Trump's government overhaul had put their safety nets at risk. When 9 a.m. came, an employee emerged from the building with flyers, asking the crowd to come back once they had scheduled an appointment. One woman yelled, 'I've called for days.' Another said, 'We came from a long ways away.' Still another let everyone know they had been handed a load of bunk, though she used a more colorful term. Quote, "On April 14th, the Social Security Agency plans to largely phase out phone services for people filing for retirement and survivor benefits or changing their direct deposit information, forcing them to file online or come into the office. Staffing levels at the Social Security Administration were already at 50-year lows, and the departure of so many workers who answered phones and worked field office counters has led to longer lines and phone waits." Teresa Boswell, whose vote for Mr. Trump in November helped flip Arizona, but who found herself fuming outside the Social Security office in Glendale last week, unable to sign up for $1,200 in monthly benefits after she retired from her job processing legal papers, told the Times, quote, "I didn't know he was going to pull this." She told the Times, quote, "This is a joke."
Bella the Dog from Springfield, A Tale of Truth and Transformation. In the small, charming town of Springfield, Ohio, lived a regal standard poodle named Bella. Bella belonged to Mrs. Vaughn Thursenberg, a well-known figure in the community, always polished, conservative in manner, but a lifelong Democrat. For years, she hosted elegant soirees, engaging in local politics, and treating her home like a kingdom. Bella had grown accustomed to a life of luxury, complete with fancy collars, custom bow ties, and an endless supply of treats from those who adored her. Recently, however, things had changed. Mrs. Vaughn Thursenberg had been watching a lot of Fox News, and it seemed to have swayed her thinking.
For more, click tree link in profile.
Sable's Song, A Siren's Journey to Joy. Once upon a time, in a small, worn-out town in Middle America, there lived a little child named Sable. Worn into poverty, Sable's body was frail, so thin that you could see her bones, but her heart was filled with an exuberance that not even hunger could dull. Sable was awkward, with dark, deep-set eyes that sparkled with innocence and wonder. Despite being born a boy, Sable always knew she was different. Inside her lived a girl, bright and effervescent, waiting to bloom.
For more, click tree link in profile.
The Future, Daughters of Liberty, A New Dawn. In 2040, the United States was a fractured nation, still reeling from the fallout of Project 2025. The catastrophic policy that had allowed a resurgence of systemic oppression. The Deep South had seceded once more, forming the antebellum republic, where human trafficking, racial inequality, and gender oppression became tragically normalized. The Second Civil War erupted as the rest of the nation sought to free those trapped in this dystopian regime. After years of bloodshed, Kamala Harris had finally led the Union to victory, restoring a fragile sense of hope. But the battle scars ran deep, especially in places like Louisiana, where the remnants of a broken society still lingered.
For more, click tree link in bio.
The Park of Secrets.
In the year 2060, near the heart of Florida, just a stone's throw from Disney World, stood a theme park unlike any other, a place known as the House of Secrets. It was a magical park, much like a state fair, filled with towering rides, carnival games, and parades that drew people from all over the world. But among the grand Ferris wheel and the colorful day parade, there was one attraction that outshined them all, the parade princess, a mesmerizing mermaid named Kenya. Kenya was a sight to behold. At 22 years old, fresh out of college, she had the kind of beauty that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Her brown skin glowed under the park lights, her hair a stunning mix of purple and pink that cascaded over her shoulders. Little pink hearts adorned her cheeks, and a ribbon of color stretched across her nose. But it wasn't just her beauty that made her special. Her eyes, big and almond-shaped, seemed to capture the hearts of everyone who saw her. A Dying Planet, The Last Harvest.
In the year 2060, Earth is a shadow of its former self, choked by pollution, endless concrete, and abandoned by nature. Only a small fishing village by the sea has managed to preserve the planet's last untouched forest. In this dying world, June and Win, two young girls and the last children in their village, cling to the remnants of hope and innocence. Win roams the forest, collecting the season's last harvest, while June sings songs that echo with a haunting beauty through the village.
For more, click Linktree in profile.
La bola de cristal de la soñadora. En algún lugar de Springfield, Ohio, una niña migrante haitiana y su madre acababan de recoger bayas frescas, nueces, dátiles y frutas para los ancianos del pueblo. Con el dinero que ganaron, se dirigieron al mercado con entusiasmo, planeando comprar verduras para un delicioso estofado de venado que la madre estaba preparando esa noche. Pero cuando llegaron, se encontraron con una escena caótica. Una multitud de partidarios trumpistas, con banderas de una era pasada ondeando en el aire, acusaba falsamente a la madre de ser una sirvienta o mascota de la gente del pueblo.
Para más información haga clic en el enlace del árbol en el perfil. I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.